Well, welcome to another Friday night. We're going to continue on our reparenting series, and tonight I want to look at the topic of boredom. I think every parent has heard their child say, "Mommy, I'm bored," and they expect their parents to solve it. And boredom is just a part infrequently that happens within a child's life that parents need to understand and need to help their children know what to do with it. But it's a really big issue also for reparenting, for people coming out of complex trauma. Because of complex trauma, people with complex trauma struggle with boredom more than most people do. And part of the reason I want to do this talk today is because there's a growing boredom within our world today. The research, the studies are showing higher percentages of people who are admitting to boredom. It's becoming an issue. And we really need to understand what's going on here. Why is boredom in this world of all of this technology, all of this different things you can do, places you can travel, why is boredom such a big issue? And that's really what I want to talk about today and help us understand it. But let me give you some of the studies. So one poll survey via Study Finds in 2022 said that 63% of U.S. adults report being bored at least once every 10 days. And then the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2020 said that young adults between the ages of 18 and 24 report the highest levels of boredom compared to other age groups. Many people report being bored with their job. Many people report being bored at school. It's really becoming, if you care just to go on the internet and put in boredom, it's becoming a big, big issue. And it's often correlated with other things because boredom leads to people feeling other things, doing other things that are considered problems, considered potentially dangerous. So boredom is correlated with increased anxiety. Boredom is correlated with depression. People with high boredom proneness are 2.5 times more likely to experience episodes of major depression, says Frontiers in Psychology. There's a higher correlation with substance abuse. So teens experiencing boredom are 50% more likely to use drugs and alcohol. And then there's a correlation with risky behavior. So the American Psychological Association says that chronically bored people exhibit higher risk-taking behavior. So thrill-seeking, gambling, all of that is connected to boredom. So let's begin with a definition. And to me, this is important because I think it's easy to misunderstand boredom as just basically, oh, I don't have anything to do. But it goes deeper than that. So it's a state of being weary and restless. There's a lack of interest. There's a lack of motivation. The person is unstimulated, discontent, everything seems blah. They just feel like they're in this very negative space. So it goes way beyond not having anything to do. There's something going on internally. So it's not just because of external stimulation. It's deeper than that. There's something going on internally in the person. It could be connected with external stimulation, but I want you to get open to there's more going on here than just lack of external stimulation. Next, I want you to think about there's different types or degrees of boredom. So I'm going to give them to you as they're listed as they progress in intensity. So the first is indifferent. And this is the person they've just kind of withdrawn from the external world and they're somewhat disengaged, but they're content to be disengaged. So they know they're bored, but it's not really bothering them. They purposely chose to be that way for a little while. But then there's the second, and that's calibrating. So now the boredom is bothering them. And so they're starting to think about options that would reduce their boredom. they're not pursuing any. They're just considering different options. And so it can be characterized by their thoughts wander. They're not sure what to do. And so they're in their head and it's bouncing around looking for different escapes, possible ways to get out of this boredom. So they're somewhat discontent with this stage, but they're not sure what to do about how to re-engage. So they're starting to not like the boredom. They're aware of that, but they're not sure how to fix it. Then you go to the third level, which would be searching. So there's a more intense restlessness that's settling in right now. And so now they begin to actively search for something to do. So it's more than just an academic exercise now. There's an active desire for a change. I can't stay in this position. And that usually has a desire for novelty. I need something different. I need something to get me out of this routine, this structure, this sameness, this rut that I'm in. And so what you begin to see is the brain is now focusing on either instant gratification, so intense fun, or some fantasy. If only I had this, then I wouldn't be bored. So that's where the brain has gone. It's now very limbic. It is not thinking through long-term consequences. It's not thinking through, is this healthy? Is this going to meet all my needs? It's just thinking of escaping through intense fun or through some fantasy. The next one is reactant, and that is the person who's now actively trying to escape the boredom. They feel trapped where they currently are. They now have strong resistance to where they are. I hate my job. I hate my relationships. I hate my life. And anything that they now see as causing their boredom, they now have this resistance to. I don't want to keep doing my daily routine. I just need a change. I don't want to keep doing my job. I just need a change. And so now they're not thinking of healthy solutions. Now they are just totally about escape, totally about impulsive decisions to gain pleasure. That's where their brain is at. And so part of what's with that is anything that makes them feel responsible. Their responsibilities, I don't want to do that. Any people that would hold them accountable to their responsibilities or to rules or to morals, I'm going to avoid those people. So now they're just reacting to everything that has a sense of sameness, drudgery, responsibility, routine, and anybody that would kind of hold them accountable to that, they're reacting to. The final one is apathetic. And this is the person who's tried all of this stuff, maybe, or they've just stayed in their head, but they've got to a point where it doesn't matter what they try, doesn't matter what they think of, it doesn't seem to help. They're still feeling bored. And so now they're feeling helpless to change anything. Everything they've tried hasn't worked. And so now their boredom now includes depression. What's the point? Nothing works. I feel hopeless. And so this is where boredom can transition into some significant mental health issues for a person. And that often happens as people progress in this boredom thing. So what I want you to see in all of this is boredom is on a spectrum. There's degrees of boredom. And so you can kind of in that very initial stage, I'm bored, and that's potentially okay, that's normal. That's not something to get panicky about. That needs to be explored for sure, but it's at the very beginning of it. But when you get to that end of the spectrum where that person has started to try everything, nothing has worked, and now they're sliding into depression, that is a very serious thing. So let me go back to, we talked about that boredom is correlated with anxiety, depression, risky behavior. What I want you to see from that is that boredom pulls us in a negative direction. So I want you to think of kind of how boredom, if you feel bored, what how does it pull you emotionally? Where does it pull you in your thinking? Where does it pull you to want to go activity-wise in your actions? And so we saw it pulls you to not just boredom, but now you're discontent. And then it makes you just not want to do anything. It takes away motivation. So boredom should make you want to act, but initially boredom makes you not want to do anything. It increases boredom. It feeds itself. That then, once the motivation starts to go, leads to procrastination, which is less activity, which is more boredom. But then people start with mindless activities. So they get busy, but it's not anything that they need. It's not anything that's necessarily healthy for them. It's just, it keeps them busy. It keeps them distracted. And then that can lead to impulse activity. So now you're not thinking through your activities. You're just doing what you feel like in that moment. It's now totally limbic brain. It's now totally instant gratification focused. It is not cortex healthy, long-term consequence consideration. It's just, I want to get out of this discomfort. I want to do something to get me out of this feeling. And so mindless, impulsive activity. Some go so far as to start creating chaos. I just need something to get me totally distracted. Let's create drama. Let's blow everything up. Let's just create a crisis. Then that will give me something to do. That will get me focused. That will give me energy. And that's their solution. Some, the longer they stay in this boredom, discontent, they go more and more to negative thinking. They then get anxiety. They then get feelings of hopelessness. They feel trapped. They get depressed. So it starts to pull them emotionally into more and more negative feelings. Others go to, it's my external world that's the problem. So I'm going to blame everybody else for my life being so boring, my life being so rigid, so many responsibilities. So they go very much to a victim stance where they blame everybody else and don't take any ownership for their own internal world. So that's a little bit of background around boredom. But now I need to get to kind of how does complex trauma contribute to boredom? Why do people with complex trauma have greater boredom than other people? To me, there's a whole bunch of factors that are all play a part and they're all significant. Probably the first one and the major one is related to your sympathetic nervous system, which is all part of your central nervous system. So your central nervous system has your two parts, your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. Your sympathetic is all about giving you energy to work, to play, to perform. And then your parasympathetic is your balancing nervous system that helps you rest and relax. Those are designed to work in balance. But what happens in complex trauma, where a child feels in danger all the time, is they're in their sympathetic nervous system all the time. It is cortisol and adrenaline, giving them energy to fight or flight. They are in an activated stress state. Their parasympathetic never comes in to help them relax. But what is significant is that becomes their normal. That is what feels right. That is where their brain goes to as a default, because that's where it's always been, where you're go, go, go on adrenaline, on cortisol. And you need adrenaline and cortisol. You need constant stress and activity to feel normal. And so what happens to a person who's grown up with that in complex trauma is your nervous system is totally out of balance, but that feels normal. Then if you come into recovery and you get balanced and you now engage your parasympathetic nervous system, you learn to rest and relax. You learn to get around safe people and safe environments where you don't have adrenaline and cortisol. It feels boring. And so what I want people to realize is when you are realigning your default setting, so what your default setting was very unhealthy, but it was your normal. When you go to get to a healthy default setting, it feels unnormal. It feels wrong. It actually causes more stress. It feels boring if you are out of whack. And it takes 3 to 6 months for a person to transition to a new default setting. You have to consciously just work through all of the feelings that are going to come up when you come to this new healthy default setting. And so you got to sit through the boredom. You got to be able to say, okay, that's just a temporary thing as my nervous system default settings realign to a healthier state. This isn't going to last forever. I can get through it. But that out of balance nervous system is just a massive cause of boredom for people once they try to get healthy. There's a second piece that comes out of complex trauma. What makes a person feel alive and to feel loved and to feel all the good chemicals in their brain is connection, to be engaged with somebody else, to feel that there's a link, there's something with us that gives life to me, where my life matters, where we contribute to each other, where our needs are being met. And so connection, if that's not happening, you feel isolated. You feel nobody's interested in you. All of those things cause you to feel bored. It's more than boredom. It's sadness, it's depression, it's helplessness, it's shame, it's feeling unloved, but you're not engaged. You're all alone on an island. You feel abandoned. And that has a feeling of boredom. A third thing, a child in complex trauma who's living feeling danger, their needs aren't being met, they're feeling pain, they're feeling empty, they're feeling fear, all kinds of negative emotions that they can't resolve. They try to get their needs met. They try to resolve their emotions, but nobody's helping them. They can't connect with anybody. So they repress their emotions. They push them down. If I can't resolve them, I don't know what to do with them. So let's just shove them down and disconnect from my emotions. What numbed emotions, repressed emotions feel like is boredom. Because now you're pushing down all emotions, not just negative ones, but good ones too. And life just feels blah because your emotions aren't there to report on what's going on, to add to the beauty of life. Life is now just feeling boring. And so the only way that a person who's repressed all their emotions feels alive is if there's adrenaline pumping, is if there's drama, is if there's risky behavior. That's their only way to escape the boredom. They need adrenaline because they've repressed all emotions. So let me add something here, because what we know with narcissists is narcissists have suppressed not just their emotions, all their pain, they've suppressed their conscience, they suppressed their gut, they've suppressed their empathy, they have suppressed any signs of feeling weak, so crying, fear, vulnerability. They just want to appear strong all the time. So they have suppressed multiple systems within them. What I want you to realize is that narcissists are some of the most discontent people. They feel bored all the time. It's like there's just this huge hole inside of them, this huge numbness. It's like the old song that I sang growing up, "There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza." The water just keeps draining out. And so they need a constant supply from the outside to make them feel alive. They don't have the ability, because they've shut everything down, to internally be alive. They need others to try to provide life to them. So they need that constant adoration, constant control. They need that constant feeling powerful over other people in order to try to fill the hole in their bucket, because there's a deep, deep haunting boredom inside of them. Part of what happens with the lack of connection, and I just want to add this, is the child can't connect to others, but then they conclude it's their fault. And now they don't even want to connect with themselves. And so they abandon themselves and they don't connect with themselves anymore. They see themselves as an undesirable person, a person they don't want a relationship with, they kind of hate. And so punishment for them is being trapped in their own body, having to live with themselves. And so they're always trying to escape themselves. When you've disconnected from yourself and you don't even have a relationship with yourself and you don't have a relationship with others, that adds to boredom. Because now all of your stimulation must come from the external world. And it's just not able to do it because you're not able to have a relationship with yourself. There's another thing that comes out of complex trauma. Many children in complex trauma, not all, but many, grew up in environments that were marked by chaos. There was just boundaries were changing every day, judgments were changing every day. Parents would one day connect, not connect. Parents were in addiction. Parents were fighting all the time. There was just this constant lack of security, lack of stability. They couldn't predict anything. It was very unstable. It was chaotic. That was their normal. That kept their adrenaline pumping. That kept them in their sympathetic nervous system. But that was their normal. So now when they're in environments that aren't chaotic, those environments feel boring. Those environments feel really blah. Like, this is dead. We need to insert some life into this party. And so they become addicted to chaos because they need the adrenaline rush. There's another piece to this that some went through, and that is they grew up in homes where it wasn't just chaos. There was just lack of structure. So mom didn't have a daily routine. Dishes didn't get done every day. Beds didn't get made. House didn't get cleaned. There was just a chaos, a mess, lack of routine, lack of structure. People didn't follow a schedule, good habits. You just kind of lived life by the seat of your pants. Whatever you felt like doing, you did. It was presented as a very spontaneous life, but it was an unstructured life. And again, that was your normal. And now when you go to get healthy, you realize you need habits, routine, structure. But that feels boring. That feels like the same thing every day. That just feels boring. And so again, to transition to healthy when your old normal has not been healthy, it's going to take a while. And it's going to feel boring in that transition period. There's another thing that happens for some that come out of complex trauma, and that would be spoiled children or children who were very neglected, who just are in their limbic brain, or their parents are in their limbic brain, and the whole focus is on, let's just make my kid happy now. Give them whatever they want, or the child just says, what can I do to escape my little pain and boredom, and let's just live for instant gratification. So they basically have grown up in an environment where parents didn't enforce consequences, parents didn't think long term. It was all about give the child what he wants to make them happy now. And if they're happy now, then they like their parents for a little while, and it's all about instant gratification. And it feeds the limbic brain being the power within the life. And so what happens when you have lived your life with a constant instant gratification focus and indulgence is you get to I want to be mature now and grow to be a healthy adult. And you get into recovery and you find out that you have to say no to yourself. You have to think long term. You have to forego some instant pleasure in order to get long-term benefits. And you go through all of that and you go, this is boring. I don't like this, because of that long-term instant gratification focus. There's another thing that happens within complex trauma. So children that couldn't fight or flight, they then go to freeze, but they still need their parents to meet their needs, so they have to go to fawn. They have to go to people pleasing. They have to go to, I am going to be more attuned to what you want, your mood, your beliefs, your needs, than to my needs and what I want. So I'm more aware of you, less aware of me. I'm going to become smaller and make you bigger. And they go through all of that. And so when it comes, they go to high school, they go into university, time to get a job. They basically don't have a clue who they are. And they are attuned to what mom and dad want, what mom and dad want for their career, what mom and dad think should be their job. And if mom and dad are coming out of a very unhealthy environment where they just want their child to have a very significant job, like a doctor, lawyer, something with status, something with power, they're going to try to push their child in a certain direction that doesn't take into account the child's gifts or personality or passions. It's all about what the parents want to make the parents look good. And a fawning child will do it. A fawning child will get drawn into that, and a fawning child will end up doing all of the stuff that their parents want. And they'll try to act like they're enjoying it. They'll say all the right things to the parents, and they will go into this job. And they could do that for years. And that could be their job for years and years. But then what happens once they get into recovery and they start to get healthy and they realize, I don't really know who I am. And so they go on this journey to start getting to know who they are. And as they get to know who they are, one of the things they're becoming aware of is, I'm doing a job that I'm not even really enjoying. I'm doing a job also that I don't even have a passion for. I just did it to please mom and dad. And so all of a sudden they realize the reason I'm bored in my job is not because of all the other things I've described. It's because there's been a mismatch between my gifts, my talents, my passions, my desires, and my career. And it's all because of fawning. And so if you find yourself in a job where you're bored, it could be a healthy thing or an unhealthy thing. That's what I want you to see. It could be because of all the things I've been talking about so far, and actually the job could really be good for you, but you've got internal stuff that's causing the boredom in the job, that if you fix that, you could have a very fulfilling life in that job. Or it could be you're bored in that job, and that's healthy because you've never got to know yourself and matched your job with your deepest passions. There's another cause of boredom. So many children who come out of complex trauma have all this emptiness and pain, and they end up trying to medicate it, trying to escape it. And that leads them to addiction. So they're going to numb or avoid, escape their emptiness and pain through activities, video games, gambling, sex, drugs, alcohol, anything to escape or numb all of that internal pain that they can't resolve. When a person's involved in addiction, it constantly leads to getting this external supply of chemicals into the brain that make them feel good and alive. And all of that just seems to solve the problem, but it's not solving the deep underlying problem. But more than that, it's creating more and more chaos in their life because the drug is taking over, the activity is taking over, everything else is sliding. So life is getting more chaotic and dramatic, and it becomes a greater and greater problem. And so once they go to get healthy and get into recovery, life often feels very boring for a person who's coming out of addiction. But more than that, The longer they stay in the addiction, they're not meeting all their needs. They're not dealing with their underlying problems. They're just looking to one activity to give them life. That activity, that drug, that alcohol becomes increasingly boring. So their life is, if an addiction is heading to boredom, and then once they get in recovery, that seems to accentuate the boredom even more for a while. But eventually, if they learn to meet their needs, they learn healthy connection, that boredom will disappear. Another thing that happens for many people coming out of complex trauma is that they are given early in life, either through their family or their culture, the wrong recipe for success and happiness. So it's basically, if you have the perfect body, if you have this job, if you have money, if you have the perfect house, all of those things that culture, some families look at, create this image of success and happiness, and you don't have any responsibilities. You can just do whatever you want. You can live like a total self-centered person. Then you'll be happy. Actually, that recipe delivers boredom. That recipe gives instant gratification for a little while. It seems to be working, but it's not really the right recipe, and it eventually lead to boredom. There's another huge thing that I want to make people aware of, and that is this. People growing up often in complex trauma, their only purpose in life, their only goal was to survive. They had no purpose beyond that. And so to survive, they had to keep themselves safe for another day. And then if they grow up in a culture where they're told their purpose should be, do these things and you'll be successful, they develop this purpose of self-indulgence, power, all of those things that the culture would propose to them. But they don't have a true healthy purpose in life, which always involves a healthy meeting of your own needs and a healthy loving of others. And so whenever you have a person who doesn't have a healthy purpose in life, there's an aimlessness, and it always leads to a boredom. So this sense of healthy purpose becomes such an integral, important piece in dealing with boredom. And then people coming out of complex trauma deal with depression. It's a chronic state for most. And depressed people always struggle with boredom. There's just a lack of motivation. Life sucks in their mind. They just are in a negative headspace. They don't want to do anything. And so boredom becomes this constant companion often to people who struggle with depression. Another thing that often happens for some children that come out of complex trauma is that they've always been entertained. They've never had to learn how to meet their own needs, how to connect with themselves, how to engage themselves. They never had to play alone. They never had to read books. They never had to think. They never had to be creative and do little hobbies on their own. They've always had external forms of entertainment. TV, friends, parents constantly giving them things, doing things for them. And so all of their entertainment has been externalized. It's been outsourced. And so children like that who've never developed tools, the ability to provide entertainment and meet their own needs, end up being bored. Then another thing is out of complex trauma, and that is everybody you've tried to connect with has hurt you. You think the solution to that is let's just isolate. Let's get away from people and not connect with anybody. And that seems like the recipe to avoid pain. But what you don't realize is you're actually adding to pain. You're creating boredom. You're creating this lack of connection, which is even more pain down the road. And so isolated people, they can have all kinds of distractions, but they become bored. Now, there's two things that I want to bring next that are important things about our brain that are in balance. So our brain needs a certain amount of stimulation. Our brain craves engagement. When things are too predictable, too easy, too repetitive, we tend to disengage and feel restless. And so our brain is constantly wanting to learn, to grow, to get new experiences. That's part of our brain. If we don't get enough stimulation, we get bored. But then we can get overstimulated. And so people that are just constantly go, and never learn to rest, to do nothing for a little bit, to just sit quietly, but are constantly stimulated, those are the people that when they actually get to a quiet place, their brain starts to panic. Because their normal is constant, go. And so being quiet feels very boring. And so you can get overstimulation of the brain, understimulation of the brain. The brain needs this balance of healthy stimulation and rest. Now, there's another piece that I've seen for many people in recovery. I have seen people who have come into recovery who are all about, I'm coming into recovery to get my kids back, to rescue my marriage, to figure out how to handle my husband, all of those different motivations. And all of those have some value, but they're not in it for themselves. And so it's like they're not all in. They're doing it, but not for the 100% pure motivation. They're kind of sticking their toe in the pool, but not jumping totally and saying, this is for me. I am going to do whatever it takes to get healthy. What I find is people that are all in, that I'm committing to this, I am going to do it 100%, don't struggle with boredom. People who aren't all in, who are kind of half committed, they end up feeling bored with recovery. It's such an important thing. Then there's another thing that happens that comes out of complex trauma. When a person's in their sympathetic nervous system all the time, and they can't go to their parasympathetic to rest or to heal, they start to approach burnout. They feel overwhelmed. And as they get to kind of the verge of burnout, what their brain will do to try to protect them, to try to get them to go to their parasympathetic nervous system, will introduce depression, boredom, lack of motivation, just feeling very crappy. And so people on the edge of burnout often begin to feel bored. Then some people who've been overwhelmed for years, their way of coping with it has been to procrastinate. And they've developed a habit of procrastinating. And that has led to a habit of being lazy. Just don't bother doing anything, put everything off, and they sit around. That leads to boredom. So laziness seems to give you instant gratification. Oh, I don't have any responsibilities. I don't have to work. I'm just going to sit. And that seems like it's going to be pleasurable, but over time that becomes boredom. Then there's another piece, and this is a huge part of complex trauma that we talk about all the time, and that is shame. So shame is, I'm not good enough. If people see me, they're going to reject me. They're not going to want to connect with me. They're going to see me as a failure. They're going to punish me and condemn me. That whole belief system about yourself that comes out of complex trauma, where you think that I'm abused and neglected, it must be my fault, I'm not good enough. So what happens now for many people with lots of shame as they go into recovery is they're afraid to try new things. They're afraid to explore. They're afraid to have a more balanced life because the fear is I'll fail. Others will look down on me. Others will judge me. I'll look silly. And so that shame now keeps them in a prison of I have to do the same thing every day so I don't fail or look silly. And that leads to boredom. Now let me give you a little extra piece here for those of you that are relating to this, that struggle with boredom. People who are bored, their brain is the last thing it wants to do is to be in the present. They're starting to think of ways to get out of the present. And so what you find with bored people is they have difficulty being present in the present. That means they have difficulty being present to their children, to their partner, to their friends, because their boredom is not thinking that connection is the solution. Their brain is thinking escape is the solution, getting out of the present. And that is very dangerous. I think for many people coming out of complex trauma, one of the things that happens for them is they're actually afraid to be alone with themselves, with their own thoughts. They're afraid of their own emotions. And so they're constantly looking to escape having to think too much about deep things, about real things. They constantly think about all kinds of other things that just are distractions. They don't feel their own emotions. They're afraid of going there. And so what you're doing there out of that fear of connecting to yourself is creating an environment where boredom will flourish. So, having dissected boredom, looked at all the underlying causes, you might go, wow, I see boredom in myself. I see where it's coming from. Now, what do I do about it? So let me end by just giving you some very practical things that can help with boredom. But the first thing I want you to see is boredom is a symptom, not just of your external environment. That's part of it. It's a symptom of your internal state. And if you've got lots of trauma, you need help to deal with your trauma. Get into a program like our LIFT program so that you can begin to deal with all of that underlying stuff. That's so essential. Secondly, become more self-aware of how boredom pulls you, where it pulls you in your thinking, in your emotions, your activities, so that you can stop it, because it's always going to pull you in a negative, self-destructive direction. And the sooner you can stop it, the better. So become more self-aware of your patterns in thinking, emotions, and behavior once boredom settles in. But then understand that boredom, small doses of boredom, can actually be a good thing. It can help you gain new insight into yourself. So don't just try to run away from boredom. Allow yourself to sit in it for a little while and explore it. Because you might go, wow, I am in a rut. I need more challenge. I need more stimulation. I am addicted to chaos. I am out of balance here. So begin to explore different insights into yourself, things that you can do to change your life right now in positive ways, not just in instant gratification ways. It can push you to try new things that push you out of your comfort zone, that push you to actually start connecting with people, to become creative, to exploring new hobbies, to getting to know yourself and your deepest passions and talents and desires and personality. All of that can be a very, very good thing. So allow boredom to become a teacher. There's another very important thing that I have found in my own life. Boredom pulls me into my limbic brain, which its only focus is instant gratification. Often when I'm in boredom, I need to look at, am I meeting my 12 needs? And I need to do activities that often are boring, that will meet the 12 needs, but then will take away the boredom. So what I have realized is that often boredom pulls me in a direction to do something that is actually the last thing I need to do. But the stuff I need to do to actually fix the boredom, I have a resistance to. I don't want to do it because it feels boring. It feels too structured. So just be aware of that internal dilemma. So sometimes when I am bored, the thing I least feel like doing is what I really need to do, because I know it will deep down meet the need, maybe not give instant gratification, but will actually meet a need that over time I will start to feel a whole lot better. Next thing, boredom pulls you to want to go into this spontaneous, just do what you feel like that makes you feel good. But that always backfires. Part of dealing with boredom is planning your days, making sure that you're meeting all of your 12 needs, making sure that you have a variety of activities. But let me add this. One of the parts that many people, when it comes to the 12 needs, don't have a clue where to go with are the two needs of the beauty need and the wow sense of awe need. Those two needs help with boredom a lot. So learn to explore beauty in art, in nature, in music, in all kinds of different things. But learn to meet the need of beauty and that sense of awe as part of your regular life. Next, connect. Connect with yourself. Connect with others in meaningful ways. That provides such a cure for boredom. Bored people that connect often then feel alive. The boredom just disappears. Connection is such an important thing. But again, remember, boredom creates a pull in you that makes you not want to connect. Connection is going against that pull. And so with that, beware of falling into mindless activities. That's where your brain wants to go. It takes you a little bit out of the boredom, but it actually feeds the boredom. Then, if you find yourself stuck in boredom and you just can't get out of it, you've tried different things, but it's now leading to hopelessness and depression, reach out for help. There's no shame in that. Talk to somebody, get some help. Get out of the house, get out of isolation. That becomes such an important thing to do. With all of that, find this sense of purpose. Find out who you are. And so begin to volunteer. Begin to give to others, not just meet your 12 needs. Begin to be involved in things that make a difference for other people in our world. That will help in many, many ways. Part of this that is so important when you're in boredom is set small goals of productivity. Don't just expect it to magically disappear if you do one thing. Say, okay, today I am going to do this thing to meet this need, this thing to meet this need. And then the next day I'm going to do this. Little goals that kind of move you out of procrastination, move you out of lack of motivation, move you out of sitting and just trying to escape, that actually engage in life again, that take agency back and say, I am the only one that can create the environment that meets my needs, that feeds my soul. So today I'm going to engage in these little activities that are going to help. As you do that, over time, it's going to have a cumulative effect that's going to take the boredom away. And so with that, be willing to try new things, explore new things, new hobbies, new projects. All of that becomes important. One of the things I think is a very, very practical thing for many people is a lot of what I've talked about so far, people are just trying to solve boredom on their own. Look to do an activity with a friend. Go for a walk in nature. Work on a project with a friend. Often just that, doing an activity and connecting at the same time, is a wonderful help in dealing with boredom. Then, finally, be aware of falling into activities that reduce your motivation. So sometimes when you're feeling overwhelmed because you got too much stress in your life, you go, okay, I'm just going to take the night off. And that can be very healthy. But then you start to fall into a habit where every night you get home from work, I'm just going to sit in front of the TV. Pretty soon, you get less and less motivated. and then you feel bored. So when you know that you're stressed and feeling overwhelmed, and you know you need to get balance back into your life and you need healthy escapes, make sure there's healthy boundaries around those things so that you don't slide into unhealthy habits that lead to losing motivation, which will lead to boredom. So recovery, as you choose and try to find healthy balance and healthy activities, always needs careful boundaries. And we don't always get it 100% the first time. And that's why we need mentors to help us navigate through what can be a very potentially dangerous time, because we can slide easily into something that feels good initially, but then leads to lack of motivation and then back to boredom. So all of that is to help us begin to confront boredom. There's many pieces to this. There's not a magic fix. That's what I want you to see. It's meeting your 12 needs, finding purpose, connecting, learning to push yourself out of your comfort zone, all of those different things. I hope that helps. Well, thank you again for being with us for another Friday night. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And have a great weekend. I look forward to seeing you again.